Hello and welcome. We are the Ladies of Strange. I'm Ashley.
I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Rebecca.
Thank you for joining us each week as we discuss
The history, mystery, and theory.
Of all things questionable, odd, and eerie.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, guess what? It's still Listener Appreciation Month.
La, 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 la.
We have a turkey, apparently.
It's a listener appreciation turkey. Why can't I do it again? My gobbler's broken. I have turkey performance.
So, Tiff.
All right. Well, now that our turkey's out of commission, that was short-lived. What are we doing? Got it.
It's Listener Appreciation Month.
So my episode was requested by a good friend of ours, Courtney. And I love her. And she's wonderful. And she's really smart. And she likes when I do like medical episodes. And I always feel kind of like iffy afterwards where I'm like, I think I presented that, but I only understood half the words. So, and she usually compliments me on them. So I feel okay.
Yeah, because Rebecca's editing is magic.
I think I presented. Do you think you presented it well? Is that what you
Did
were
I
trying
miss
to
a
say?
word?
Yes. Because you've definitely presented them.
We're starting off strong today, guys.
You have a subject presented before.
I have presented subjects before. Would you guys like to hear about the subject today?
Yes, I'm ready to guess it.
I hate you. Have either of you ever heard of Henrietta Lacks?
Sounds familiar.
Only when she sent me the subject recommendation.
Thanks for not looking into
Uh-huh.
it. So Henrietta was born August 1st, 1920 as Loretta Pleasant. And just a heads up, when I'm giving you her background information, this is coming from Britannica because it was all the same everywhere. So you can't go wrong with some Britannica.
Good job validating sources.
Yeah.
Look at us learning after 200 episodes.
Something like that, right?
I lost
Anyway.
count.
But yeah, so all the sources had the same information. This one had a little bit more than some of the others. So we're going with this one. So August 1st, 1920, which is 68 years and a day before my birth. August 2nd, 1988. She was...
You want to give them your social,
I was
too?
about to say, should we just put a pin where we record while we're at it?
Clap.
So Henrietta's mother died when she was 4, giving birth to her 10th child.
Ooh,
In Clover, Virginia. So her father, having 10 children and not knowing what to do, divided his children amongst relatives to be raised because he couldn't take care of all of them. Henrietta was raised by her grandfather, who was looking after another grandchild, Henrietta's cousin David, who also went by Day. They were married, Henrietta and Day, April 10th, 1941.
Okay.
And they soon moved to Maryland to work steel mill.
How cousiny are we talking here?
Everything I
Like first cousins?
read seemed like first cousins.
Okay.
But it was the 20s. So,
Genetics were still a thing.
They didn't know that.
hey,
Did we not? In 1920?
I mean, they knew that they were cousins, but a lot of people
it's fine. It was the 20s.
kept it close.
So they were tobacco farmers. They were out in the middle of nowhere. She helped work on the farm. It was land that her ancestors had been slaved on. Her grandfather lived in an old slave house, and she helped him work the land with her cousin. She had this part's not from Britannica. She had a 6th grade education. Her school was like 2 miles away, and she would walk each day 2 miles uphill both ways in the snow. Except for it was Virginia, so not. Does it snow in
Snow
Virginia?
happens in Virginia.
Huh. Maybe we should look into Virginia. So anyway,
For what?
I want snow.
Okay.
We are so sidetracked. Okay, so Day and Henrietta moved to Maryland. Day was going to work in the steel mill because, World War II and all of that is like bustling.
The war is bustling.
And so is Steele.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She had 5 children, and she was known as like happy, bubbly. She was the one that everybody came to in the family, and like she was known to spend hours cooking for the family, and it was like a big event, and she would sing and dance. I was known for, I think it was her bright red nail polish. So all that fun stuff. Before her 5th pregnancy, she had a knot around her cervix, and it was worrying her. And then her cousin, I believe a different cousin, not her husband,
Thank you for the clarification.
was like, maybe you're pregnant. She was. It was her 5th child, had the baby. Afterwards, she said she still felt the knot. She had irregular bleeding, lots of pain. So she went to Johns Hopkins. Why can't I say Johns Hopkins?
There you go.
Thank you. Johns Hopkins.
You got
She
this.
went to the hospital in Baltimore. I believe at first they were like, oh, it's probably just syphilis.
Oh, okay.
When that test came back negative, they were like, oh, okay, come on in and we'll do some more stuff to figure out what it is. Some more tests. That's what it is. So in January, they did the test. 5 days later, it was late January because in February, 5 days later, she gets the results that it's cervical cancer. She goes in for surgery to see what's going on. And while the doctor's in there, he removes 2 samples, one healthy, one tumorous. And she goes about her life, gets progressively worse, and ends up passing away at the age of 31.
With 5 kids?
Yeah.
That's a lot of life.
Yeah.
I mean, so my grandmother was 20. Hold on. She had 6 kids. And I want to say by the time she was 22, she had the 6th.
Yeah, my grandmother, I think she had her youngest, who was the 6th one, when she was maybe 31.
Yeah.
Well, I feel unaccomplished.
Go figure, the kids lined up with when Navy Dad was back from whatever he was doing.
Yeah. That
Well,
tends
that's
to happen.
convenient, because if not, there'd be lots of explaining to do.
Right?
You
No,
got some
everyone acts
explaining
too
to do.
similar to have questions.
Right.
Fair.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, because I thought that you would really enjoy this, Rebecca. Her treatments were several radium treatments to try and
Oh boy.
cure hers. It involves stitching small glass tubes of the radioactive metal secured in fabric pouches called Brack plagues.
No.
the cervix.
No fabric inside the body.
Yeah.
or
yeah.
radium.
Or radium. Well, the radium's inside glass tubes. The radiation's not great, but you're gonna die of infection before you die of radiation sickness.
But don't you also get radiation to cure or help cure cancer
Yeah, but
nowadays?
it's not putting straight radium inside your. I mean, you still get the radio.
Radiation?
You're also
Uh-huh.
not putting a quilt inside your uterus.
Just tampons.
There are other problems with that. I'm certain they didn't do any testing. They didn't do any clinical trials. They didn't test the glass for biocompatibility. Or, I'm sterility was just becoming a thing.
Excuse
But
me. I
even
need to
then,
see
like,
your
e-
documentation. on
Even
this,
today,
please.
we have huge lawsuits because sterilization was done incorrectly. I know a lot about this. Let's move on.
So I forgot to. I'm sorry. I was working off Britannica. Forgot I had some other notes on this, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. The mass, the cancer tumor, they said the size of a nickel. The doctor said it was shiny, purple, and looked like grape jello.
Ugh.
When he got the samples of tissue, it was 2 dime-sized samples, one cancerous and one healthy. And at the time, it was standard practice to not have to ask for consent when taking these things. So all she knows is she went in for surgery to get these things sewn into her cervix, or sewn onto her cervix, and they take some samples out while they're at it.
Guys, if you learn one thing from the show, and even if it's just because we do something stupid like mix up Sweden and Switzerland, please ask why.
So hold on. So they put the radium in the same time they did the biopsies, before they even knew that it was cancerous.
No, they knew it was cancerous. They confirmed that she had cancer, and she went in to have surgery to get the quilt things sewn onto her cervix. And while they
The
were
radioactive
in there,
quilt.
while they were in there, they took these samples.
Okay.
Didn't tell her, but took them.
I mean, I wouldn't be mad at them taking them out.
I mean, I can see why once they're in there, they would decide to take samples, but you have to disclose that afterwards.
Yes. We will get into that later.
Oh no. Don't like that.
Because
oh no.
So 9 months after her diagnosis, October 4th, 1951, she passed away. So why would our beautiful friend Courtney want me to tell you about this wonderful mother who had cervical cancer and then passed away?
Yes, why?
You tell us.
Because those samples that the doctor took without consent are called the HeLa cells. Capital H-E, or capital H, lowercase e, capital L, lowercase a. HeLa. Taken from the first 2 letters of her first name, first 2 of her last. the HeLa cells. And the HeLa cells were the first cell line that we were able to maintain as a society. Do you know what that means?
No, but it sounds smart.
Doesn't it?
I don't know if it sounds smart. What does it mean?
I mean, the first cell line that we could maintain, you said?
Yes. So
That's like telling me the drum line sample went well. Like what does it mean?
Probably the first cells that they were able to keep alive in a clinical setting.
ding, 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 ding.
Oh, who's the smart one now, bitches?
So, so Dr. Tellen, I believe he's the one who did the removal. He was working with this guy, George Gay, to confirm some suspicions he had. So he believed that some cancers were worse than others, and he wanted to justify and prove that these hysterectomies he was doing for people with cervical cancer were justified. So he was taking these samples, sending them off to George Gay, and having him try to investigate them and prove some theories he had. George Gay was able to do tests when he got samples, but the way cells work, they would only last for a day or two and then they die off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they run out of energy.
Yes. The HeLa cells, for some reason, would not die off. Miss Henrietta Lack is considered immoral because her cells...
No,
Immortal. Look, immortality is immoral, okay? She is considered
That's the devil's
immortal.
That was the most perfect depiction of y'all's relationship.
Well, like, we already touched on white supremacy and the fact that they jumped straight to syphilis, which, like, is the problem. They should test for things, but the fact you went straight for that because you had a lump, questions.
Right.
Yeah.
So, mortal.
So race will play into this as we break down later what's going on, but that does play a role. So I would like to point out that this podcast will kill you. I'd never listened to them before.
Oh, they're
Holy
good.
crap, they're good. And they're so
Yes.
smart.
Yes.
Holy crap.
Yeah, there are really smart people out there that have podcasts.
We're not one of them.
No.
We're confused if our listeners go to space, okay?
Okay, still waiting for confirmation that any of you have been to space. And don't make your astronaut friend listen just to prove me wrong.
So I preface that because most of this information I'm about to give you right now came from that show. I understand about 10% of it. But I think I've got it broken down in a way that Ashley and I can understand.
I'm smart. I knew what the keeping the cells alive was.
Sort of like how when I talked about the Van Allen radiation belts, I was like, the sun emits stuff.
Stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So cell culture is growing cells in an artificial medium. This is used for basically everything from vaccines to biopharmaceuticals, radiation, virus research, genome research, and much, much more. Scientists couldn't grow cells in a lab because they would die quickly. HeLa didn't die and became a cell line. We've discussed this part.
Yes, we have that part. We
Oh.
are understanding so
Hey.
far.
So, in general, HPV causes cervical cancer most of the time.
Can cause.
Yeah.
Cause. I think they said it was like 90 to 99% of cervical cancer cases came from a strain of HPV.
Okay.
Okay.
Get vaccinated.
Right?
Well, what is that? What do you say?
What do I say?
Yeah.
I say a lot of things.
Correlation is not causation.
Yeah.
Because it's like 90% of the cervical cancer cases can be linked to HPV, but not all HPV cases can be linked to cervical cancer.
Yeah, no,
Correct.
you can have HPV without getting cervical
Right,
cancer.
Yeah, there's multiple strains when you get the HPV vaccine.
Yeah.
It's whichever, like, I think it's 3 or 5 that are the most common that you actually get.
So let me tell you a little bit about this. High-risk strains have E6 and E7 proteins that get into our genes and turn tumor suppressor genes off. This allows cells to grow uncontrollably.
Oh, the kill switch.
Yeah. Normally, science magic happens that keeps the cells from growing too fast and replicating any defects.
Kill switch.
E6 and E7 say, "Fuck that noise, go berserk." Are you following along, Ash?
I'm following along, but that was like the most Caucasian mother thing I've ever heard you say. Fuck that noise. Go berserk.
I tried to get it to like where you and I could understand.
Oh, I got it. It will forever be in my brain
I
now.
mean,
Cool.
Tiffany's summary on cancer. Fuck that noise. Go berserk.
So these E6 and E7s saying that help the cells grow quickly and last longer, but not indefinitely. Okay? Insert telomeres. Telomeres are the end parts of chromosomes. When a cell splits, the telomeres get a bit shorter. The cell can, in theory, replicate until it's out of telomeres and then it can't go any further. This is very dumbed down. Following?
Well, it's another safety mechanism. Like, you can, scan up photos so many times that you'll eventually lose any useful data.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking like a lizard losing its tail. It can only
No.
grow back so many times.
It just gets shorter every
Uh-huh.
time.
It's like making a copy from a copy from a copy. Like, 20 copies down the line, it's not going to be as good as the original.
That's
Well-
what my ancestors said.
Well, you're technically not a copy. We are not clones.
We'll talk about cloning later.
Look at her going all science.
Tried a hair flip, but I don't have any hair. Cancer cells can't tell where telomeres end, so they keep dividing. And after a while, the DNA becomes too damaged to keep replicating. Okay, cancer sucks. So, why does HeLa keep going? Oh, I forgot to put a pronunciation guide on this one. Shit. Okay. There are enzymes called telomerase, and that's how they pronounced it on that show.
Is that what happens when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie?
Telomerase.
They replicate just the telomeres during replication. So HeLa has this. So instead of getting all the good juicy stuff that when you replicate it, it could kind of, you're not getting all the bad shit. You're just getting that last little tiny bit. Over 90% of cancer cells have this. Unfortunately, these keep all the defects. Okay, so I was wrong. I should have read my notes. These telomeres keep all the defects, which are usually phased out with the telomeres as it's replicating. So telomerase are the things that keep that shit. But if you can isolate the telomerase,
Okay.
then you're in the sweet spot. Most cells have mutations, but not in the telomerase. If you can isolate just the telomerase, you can get cells to divide indefinitely, which is what they do in labs now. The way they described it was really smart and followed. As I was reading my dumbed down version, realized I have no clue what I was trying to say. They're really smart. Go listen to them. Basically, these telomerase are the shit. And if you can just get those to replicate, you can keep a cell alive and work with it indefinitely. Due to HeLa, the first cell line, we now have cell lines from everything. So you can get them from animals, organs, embryos, whatever. We can use this research with viruses to see how they interact with cells and how the cells can fight off viruses using telomerase. I think I'm an idiot and tried to follow along with this podcast will kill you. Those are in my notes.
I was about to say that's written in there,
Yes.
not it?
Yep.
This is like the secret room at the CDC. That's all I can think about is all the viruses and all the stuff that they have alive. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they do have samples of basically everything.
Mhm.
Yeah, the CDC uses HeLa cells for sure.
For sure.
No doubt in my mind. I would put money on it if I had any. So she has what is considered an immortal cell line. What, you may ask, is the difference between an immortal cell line and stem cells?
Stem cells are genetically or
Stem cells copy what they adopt other cells' characteristics.
I was thinking that they were artificially altered.
So stem cells are undifferentiated. They can become anything. Immortalized cell lines come from what this podcast will kill you called grown-up cells. They have a particular function in our body. So the HeLa cells came from the cervix, so they're cervix cells. They're differentiated. Stem cells can become anything because when you're in the embryo, you're like these tiny little cluster of cells. You
Right.
can
Yeah.
become
They haven't been
anything.
assigned yet.
Yeah. So embryonic stem cells can become anything. Somatic stem cells are regenerative cells in our body. They can only become one of a couple things. Like if there's a somatic stem cell somewhere floating around near your kidney, it can become a kidney cell or something else that It's beside your kidney. I don't know anatomy.
Or something else in that general
Do we
area.
need an
but
anatomical map in the studio?
I want a skeleton.
Ooh, can we get a skeleton?
Yeah.
I already know where he's going to go in here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do it. He can chill with Dean.
Oh, they can keep each other company.
Perfect. Okay, so that was a lot of medical jargon to basically tell you that these HeLas are crucial to learning about cells. They were the first cell clusters they could keep alive. They could also manipulate them because they duplicated and replicated, and so you could take some, do what you need to do, put a virus in there and see how it fights the virus, and you've still got some over here that are just chilling. Couple things that the HeLa cells have been used for. Cells were used for learning how to handle and ship cells because these were sustaining. They could take some and send them off somewhere else, and they still had some duplicating here, so they were able to share this. Some cell isolation came about because of this. IVF. They discovered that there weren't 48 but 46 chromosomes. Didn't know that was a thing.
This is all off the 2, what did you say, nickel sized?
Yes. So
There's a lot of cells.
thanks for bringing that up. They discovered that the healthy cells replicated a couple times and died out. It was the cancerous cells that kept duplicating. That's why I had that medical jargon in there. It was the telomeres and the telomerase with the cancer that helped these reproduce over and over and over
because
again.
that's how cancer works. It just kept itself going.
Mhm.
Yes. Thank you. That's why that medical jargon was in there. See? Teamwork.
They're your notes.
I was
Shut
about to say, we did nothing. Unless you're referring to this podcast will kill you as your team.
Dude, they're so smart. I'm going to start listening to that show a lot. So let's see here. They were able to learn about chromosomal abnormalities because of this. They understood where Down syndrome came from because they learned that there were 48, not 40, or there weren't 48, there were 46 chromosomes. So when they saw 47 there, they were like, oh, that's the difference, blah, blah, blah. So it led to a greater understanding of things like that. They were able to study the effects of drugs and medicines. They sent cells to space to test the effects of space on human cells. The most significant impact that these cells had was shortly after she died in October of 1951. 1952, there was a polio outbreak. These cells were used to create the polio vaccine. So Henrietta Lacks saved a ton of lives.
Damn.
They most recently, well, I say most recently, they're being used literally everywhere. COVID vaccine used HeLa cells. There are more than 17,000 patents involving HeLa cells. Research involving them has been described in more than 110,000 scientific publications.
And Tiffany read them all.
I read 110,000 scientific publications in quotes and 5 sources. So yeah, I put it in my notes. There have been 3 Nobel Prizes awarded with direct relation to HeLa cell research. Girls killing it after, she killed it.
Well, this also wasn't done consensually.
That is the big thing. So Tuskegee Institute was shipping out these cells to shipping out these cells to anybody who wanted some for research for $10 a sample plus shipping fees. They weren't able to keep up with the demand.
This isn't an infomercial,
I was
guys.
about to say, you pay shipping and handling and you'll get a free cell cup. I don't know. Petri dish?
Petri dish? Probably.
Cell cup.
I don't know.
Yeah, I did not look into how they shipped the HeLa cells. Microbiological Associates was a company that was created with the direct purpose.
That word just escaped your body. I don't even think you knew if you were saying the right word.
I didn't. Of shipping these to anybody who would pay for it. So the public learned about the HeLa cells and people wanted to know more about the donor, obviously. They tried not to give out information, so they created the aliases Helen Lane or Helen Larson because the HeLa was still there. And by 1966, HeLa cells were amazing and used for everything. But unfortunately, HeLa cells were so amazing that the research people were doing was being contaminated by the HeLa cells quote unquote. Basically, there was no way for them to separate the HeLa cells from the other cells. They realized what they were working with that they thought was clean was actually just HeLa cells. So how do you fix that?
Science.
Yes. Obviously, you get samples from her family to be able to isolate her cells from other cells, like genetic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, people don't know that these are Henrietta Lacks cells. Her family doesn't know these are her cells. So Johns Hopkins called the children, who were all still patients, and asked for blood samples under the guise of testing for genetic markers for cancer.
No.
Yeah.
Just be honest.
Right? I was about to say, why continue the lie at that point?
Well, if they're being honest about it, like, then they're going to be like, well, my mother never agreed to this, or like, is there something that we need to be doing, or like, does she have any rights to this? So obviously that was not the case, and they never got back to them on the results of the genetic testing. 1973. This was 22 years after Henrietta died. Her son's wife, Babette, was talking to a friend, and he mentioned the coincidence that her last name was Lacks, and he was working with Henrietta Lacks cells.
Oh.
So she was like, excuse me, what? And he explains, what the cells were, what they were doing. And he gave her this book basically all about the HeLa cells. This was the first time anybody in that family
had any idea.
Now, keep in mind, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry created from this, because this has uses in absolutely everything, like testing new medications on it, radiation testing, everything is being done to these. So these cells are going to every corner of the world. The Lack family had no clue.
It's not hard.
Right?
Well, unfortunately, according to laws that are in place, once these cells leave your body, they're not yours anymore. You have no rights over them.
They're my DNA.
It is. That's why you have to consent to giving them.
Now.
She didn't consent.
She did not. There weren't laws governing
I was about to say, I don't think
before
that
then.
was the case then.
Yeah.
Not the point.
Right? So one thing that was mentioned in a couple different places, but not enough for me to know if it was a reputable fact or not, but they were saying that her ancestors or her relatives that were alive were living, some said poverty, some said low income, and couldn't afford health insurance, and yet their mother's cells launched this multi-billion-dollar industry. So like, where's the...
Congratulations. People suck.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it. This is the worst.
Yeah. So thanks to her family finding out about it and getting press on it, like there's a book by Rebecca Skloot named The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Full disclosure, I started research last night and didn't have time to read this, but I've heard good things. There's also an HBO...
You didn't have time to read an entire medical book?
No, this isn't a medical book. This is like a read explaining her life and what happened to her.
Okay.
There's also an HBO movie based on her, but again, full disclosure, I started researching last night and didn't have time to watch it. Heard good things though. Once all of this kind of got out there, some institutes that were using these cells were like, dude, that's fucked up.
Yeah,
and we're sorry.
It
so
is.
they started to make donations to the Henrietta Lack Foundation. The Henrietta Lacks Foundation provides financial assistance to individuals and families who were involved in historic research without their knowledge, including the Tuskegee syphilis study and human radiation experiments. These affected predominantly minority groups. So when we were talking about race earlier, or racism, a big part of this is that when Henrietta Lacks was going through this, she traveled to Johns Hopkins Hospital because it was the only hospital in Baltimore at the time that would treat Black people. The Tuskegee syphilis study, Black Americans. A lot of these things were people who had no other choice but to use, like her. She could only use Johns Hopkins University, and they took advantage of people who didn't have any other options, and the cells that were being collected were only coming from that George Gray was using were only coming from Johns Hopkins University without consent. And if that's the only place that African Americans can go to, then, that's kind of not saying it's targeting, but it's targeting. So the Henrietta Lacks Foundation focuses on minority groups that are being disproportionately affected by this. since all of this, I tried to find like concrete laws and some kind of like, as of this date, you now need consent, blah, blah, blah. Couldn't find all that. I know you need to have consent and there are forms that have to be filled out for them to take things like this. But as of today, once those leave your body, they are no longer yours. You have no rights to them. And it's still kind of, it can be worked around.
Well, I think even like thinking back to forms that I've had to sign for surgery or even childbirth or whatever, it says in there, like there's always that clause that like this may be used for further research, investigation, whatever purposes. Like it doesn't go into detail, but there's just that tiny little clause in there that basically says like, these are ours now and we may or may not do anything with it. Like when I had my gallbladder out, I wanted to keep it. And they were like, nah, bitch, we can't do that. You're weird.
I mean, I was thinking about that when doing this research. Like, how cool would it be? Like, you have kidney stones taken out and you're like, I would love to keep those. And like, no, they're not in your body anymore. They're ours.
No,
Yeah.
they let them keep them, don't they?
They wouldn't let me keep my gallbladder.
Just be like, bitch, I made that thing.
Right? I have used that for 30 years. I didn't make it. My mom and dad made it. And then they signed it off to me when they signed my birth certificate. That's how I see it.
I'm down
Okay.
with that. Posthumously. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Yes. Killing it.
Or posthumously.
Posthumously. That's what I was trying to say.
Well, we in the South, so it's posthumously.
She has been awarded honorary doctorates from many institutions and is now a member of the National Women's Hall of Fame.
Yes, ma'am.
In 2013, the European Molecular Biology Laboratory in Germany published the Gila genome without the consent of the Lax family. Rebecca, did you know that the genome contains like a lot of personal shit in it?
Yeah.
I
That's
didn't know
what
that.
makes you you.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I was like,
What
oh,
did you
yeah,
think
just
it was?
You thought everybody just had the same cells floating around in their body?
No, but I thought if like I didn't know you could like post a genome and then like if you looked at a genome you could find out like, oh, this person has this or that person has that or this has been
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a blueprint for you.
cool. Well, they posted the Gila genome without the consent of the Lax family, which could
You
have
have had a
revealed
child.
and
What do you think her genomes are made out of?
mama and daddy.
And if it wasn't the two of you, she would be a different person.
Yeah, well, okay. So the concept of like how much information you could get from it just boggled my mind.
It bottled it right up.
Bodies are complicated.
If they are. So since this could have revealed private genetic information about her descendants, a compromise was reached and the Gila Genome Data Use Agreement took effect. That means that now 2 members of the Lax family sit on the U.S. National Institute of Health working group and grant permission to access the Gila sequence information before it is passed out.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
So while this sucks for that, like this was not something that should have happened. They should not have taken that without consent. The question is, Gila's impact on the world is immeasurable.
Mm-hmm.
Immeasurable. There's no way to tell what that has done for humanity. I mean, it has eradicated polio in multiple countries, and like it's used for vaccines, it's used for research. It's immeasurable. Does that make it okay that there was no consent?
No.
I agree. A lot of people don't. So, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, the ends don't justify the means.
No, and you can
Period.
be grateful
Oh,
for what came out of it, and you
Mhm.
can appreciate the science behind what it led to, but that doesn't make the lack of consent okay.
agreed. There have been some court cases where people have like fought saying like this was my stuff that led to this, and they've been dismissed because once it's out of your body it's no longer yours. But her name has been associated with a bunch of cases when it comes to lack of consent, and that led to the laws being changed where you have to consent. And she's just without realizing it, the woman who, you know, passed away at 31 as a mother of 5, I'm not saying that's nothing to like toot a horn about, because
Right.
it is, like, she led a great life.
While fighting cervical cancer.
But like, think about if there's an afterlife, like being like, hey Henrietta, come look at this real quick, like the new data's in, look at all these lives you affected, cool shit, you get to bump up to an extra level of heaven.
Wait.
That's how that works, right?
That's going to be Tiffany's new Netflix special.
Tiffany's just rewriting all the books.
I would be here for it. That would be kind of a cool series.
Right? Just be like, dude, Henrietta, look what you did.
You
And she's
cannot
like,
be in charge of The Good Place.
No, I could not. But yeah, her cells. Oh, another thing I forgot to tell you. At one point, they called her back in to when they were doing more like radiation stuff. They were going back in, and the doctor tried to take some more samples. It was towards the end of her life, and they were so toxic because of the disease that they couldn't be used.
Well, and the radiation.
After she died, though, here's the thing: they didn't have rules about consent for a living person, but they had to have permission to get stuff during an autopsy. So they went to her husband and was like, "Hey, we'd like to do an autopsy on your wife." And he was like, "No, that's not necessary." And they kept hounding him. And finally he was like, "Okay, you can do a partial biopsy or a partial autopsy."
No means no.
Right?
Get out.
So they did a partial autopsy, harvest some more cells. I don't know if those were usable since the ones they could try to get earlier weren't. But yeah, they went through and like got permission to biopsy
Well, the
her
only
body.
thing I can think is, even though they didn't explicitly have consent, which is not okay, as we've very much discussed in this episode, to take the cells and use them for other things, they did, I'm sure, have consent to perform the procedure while she was living, you know, so I'm sure that they had to get some sort of consent, some sort of authorization to do a procedure on her. Whether it explicitly said they were taking samples or they told her they took samples is a whole nother can of worms, but you can't get consent from the dead.
Nope.
So that's probably where having to get consent from her family in that case came from.
The thing that like I was going through and I was like, oh, that sucks. Oh, that's shitty. Why would you do that? But when they called the kids and were like, hey, we're going to do genetic testing.
That's just blatant.
Yeah.
Like on some very, very small scale, like Rebecca said, like I could see them going in to put in the radiation or to do whatever the case is that they were doing. I mean, like, that doesn't look right. We should probably take a sample of that for testing. Then that is disclosed after the fact, which it wasn't. But I'm not saying it's okay, but that is somewhat explainable in that situation. But blatantly calling them with a motive and not disclosing that,
yeah, don't like that. Don't like it. Nope.
No.
But that's
Not
Henrietta Lacks.
but she is a queen and she should be sitting up there with Jesus or whoever sits on a throne in heaven. I don't know, Gabriel.
I don't know. But yeah, she's chilling on next level. Like she got bumped up to level 8.
She's on X Games mode heaven. What?
Yeah, Tiffany can't be in charge of heaven.
But that's what I got. So thank you, Courtney. It was a fascinating read and I learned a lot.
I got angry.
There were lots of words I didn't understand, but I kind of followed along. So
I was just thinking of like little eels when you said moray. I'm like, I could see them being like little DNA sequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when I rewrite the history books, you'll rewrite the science books. Or you can illustrate my science books.
Yeah.
No.
I'm here for it.
No.
You've seen my art. It's beautiful.
Stay
That's
tuned.
not the problem I have with the setup.
Stay tuned. 2037. It's going to be great for the publishing industry.
2037.
I had to set a far out date, but not too far out, because who knows how long you and I are going to be able to survive.
What do you think's going to happen in 16 years?
I don't know.
We're going to be raising teenagers
through
those years, so we could very well just go off the deep end. It's possible.
They'll be fine.
They will be. But anyway, on that note, I forgot that I into these things. Remember, friends, everyone has something that they find odd. Let us tell you why it's not.
If you have any questionable topics you'd like us to discuss, you can share them with us on any of our social medias. Links can be found on our website, theladiesestrange.com, or join us on Discord. We have fun.
We do.
We have a blast.
We have good times.
We have the memes
And the pet photos.
And the snack photos.
and the regular conversation. What is that?
That the Beatles sick? It's fine. I'm not bitter.
Or you can email stuff to us, theladiesestrange@gmail.com.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And if you think we're doing a great job and want to support the show, tell your friends about us. Or subscribe, rate, and review. Or join our Discord. We love you. Keep it strange and consensual. Ooh, 2 weeks in a row.
Oh,
wait.
well, no.
Nope.
We
skip
skipped
a week. It's fine.
We skipped 2
2
weeks.
weeks. Whatever. Just, consent.
Damn it.
Bye.